Hey, what's up, everybody? Tim Albrecht here, and welcome to this week's episode of the Ask a YFP CFP segment of the Your Financial Pharmacist podcast, where we feature questions from you, the YFP community, to be answered by one of YFP Planning's fee-only certified financial planners. Before we jump into today's question, I want to give a shout out to YFP Planning's incredible financial planning team that makes this segment possible. YFP Planning offers fee-only comprehensive financial planning services that are customized to the pharmacy professional. So whether you want to optimize your investing plan, pay off student loans, or simply build a solid financial plan, YFP Planning will help get your income working for you rather than the other way around. You can learn more by visiting yfpplanning.com. Again, that's yfpplanning.com. One last thing, please note that this podcast is intended for educational purposes and should not be considered financial or investment advice, as we do not know the variables to one's personal situation when answering a question. This week's question comes from several different folks in the YFP Facebook group that are really wondering what should we be making of the news that dropped this week as it relates to some of the changes from the Department of Education for public service loan forgiveness. Tim Baker, just when I thought we covered every in and out, every nook and cranny of PSLF, here we've got some new news that dropped this week that I think might be welcome news to some borrowers. So give us the details. PSLF, new news, early October 2021.
I feel like the Department of Ed has kind of been keeping us on our toes here because I feel like especially with the news with Fed Loan kind of exiting and some of the other servicers and what's going on, there's been a lot going on with a lot not going on. And I think this probably this news is probably the first step in the direction of something happening. So, and we'll link to the website, the posting that they have on studentaid.gov in the show notes. But on October 6th, the Department of Ed announced changes to PSLF for a limited time as a result of kind of COVID-19 and the pandemic. So it creates an opportunity for borrowers that were maybe on the outside looking in or not sure if they would be eligible for forgiveness. There's been a lot of, hey, these payments should count, but they're not counting for whatever reason. And it's led to a lot of frustration. It's led to a lot of confusion. It's just kind of another chapter in kind of this bungled mess that is Fed loan, and they're all. I think there's a lot of blame to go around, but PSLF, Fed loan, Department of Ed, all that stuff. So definitely want to spend a few minutes, Tim, to kind of go through some of these changes. Mm-hmm. Really, the first one here is under the new rules, any prior payment will count as a qualifying repayment, regardless of loan type, repayment plan, or whether the payments were made in full or on time. Now, I read this as like, wow, that's pretty broad reaching, and I'm the first thing that comes into my loan are things like Perkins loans or things like that. Yeah. But when you read down further, it's not any type of loan or anything. Like, you still have to be in a certain loan type, et cetera. So what this does is that they're really applying this more to borrowers with direct loans, those who have already consolidated into the direct loan program, but they extend this out to next year. So if you consolidate into the direct loan program, which that's what consolidation is, a lot of people get that twisted with refi. Consolidation is just you taking a lot of your federal loans and putting them into a consolidation unsubsidized loan and a consolidated subsidized loan. And then that unlocks a lot of the repayment plans, which then allows you to kind of enter the PSLF program. So long story short, if you consolidate, Tim, between now and next year, you can get basically credit towards these PSLF payments. Now, Parent Plus loans are not eligible under this. They're calling this a waiver. And there are two requirements that receive additional qualifying payments. One is full-time employment. So you have to be working full-time for a nonprofit, a 501c3, a government entity, and that's really qualified as 30 hours per week. So you could work 20 hours for one nonprofit, 10 hours for another nonprofit, and you're still good to go. And you can receive, a lot of this again is retroactive. You can receive credit on any payments that were made after October 1st, 2007. So again, we always advocate that you should be doing your employment certification so then you can actually see how many, we want to turn that zero payments credited to hopefully 50, 60, and do that really every year. So the other piece is that the loan consolidation. So if you have FFEL loans, federal family education loans, Perkins loans, or other types of federal student loans that are not direct loans, you have to consolidate those into the direct loan program by 2022, October 31st, 2022.
Tim, just to clarify real quick on this. So, I think so folks are tracking here. Some things that have not changed is you still have to work for a qualifying employer. We've talked
Yes,
about that at length. You still have to be working full time, or in the example you gave, piecing together that full time employment. And you still have to have direct loans. But here there's essentially a provision that's allowing folks to take that consolidation step. And essentially they're pushing this out for another year. So, if folks were making previous payments under a repayment plan that didn't count towards PSLF payments because perhaps that consolidation step to a direct loan wasn't taking, there's essentially now this provision that could allow for past ineligible loan payments to count. Is that correct?
correct.
Okay.
And my assumption here is that one of the things that has always been a risk for borrowers is that if they in the past, if they consolidate it, it's reset the clock.
Right.
So as an example, let's say, Tim, I have, and this happens, we've seen this with clients. Let's say I have $100,000 in direct loans and $100,000 in FFEL loans,
Mm-hmm.
and I've been paying on them for 5 years. So I'm halfway through PSLF. In reality, those FFEL loans are not eligible for PSLF. So if I were to then consolidate the whole lot, I basically would start back at the starting line for everything.
Mm-hmm.
So it resets that payment. I'm assuming that if consolidation happens here, that they're not going to reset that payment. They're going to look
Mm-hmm.
basically as long as you have kind of full-time employment with one of those entities, 501c3 nonprofit, government, that they're going to count those towards that 120 payment
Mm-hmm.
requirement. That's the big thing is that, the previous requirements is that you had to repay. On the website here, it says repay under an IDR plan, an income driven plans. That's not quite true because you can still get credit if you're in a standard plan. So if you spend 2 years in a standard plan
Mm-hmm.
and then shifted over the last 8 years, that counts. Make 125 payments. That was the previous requirement. Now the wave changes that past payments under any plan count as long as you're in that direct loan type.
Mm-hmm.
And past ineligible loan payments may count towards 120 total payments. So I think, again, I'm biased, Tim. I think for a lot of pharmacists out there that are looking at 6 figures worth of debt and that are weighing this as an option, the tail that wags the dog for their financial plan is this question and having complete clarity of what to do with this. And there were moving pieces before, and now even more so. And I hope this is a step in some direction of like simplicity and clarity, but that might be wishful thinking. So again, I think if you have any questions, talk to a professional that knows what they're talking about. You definitely don't want to do something that is irreversible or that you can't change or that puts you on a path that is ultimately not
Mm-hmm.
in your best interest. So, and again, this might be step 4 of 7 or 8 in terms of the, rolling out what are the next changes with PSLF. But,
Yeah.
It's safe to say that, we need to kind of get comfortable with some change with this particular program as they kind of work through the student loan servicer and all that stuff.
Yeah, and I think, Tim, the point you made, kind of taking a step back, is if we get out of the details for a moment, at the end of the day, this is more generous, more inclusive for folks that maybe were on the outside looking in. There's an opportunity now to, in a pretty short period of time, be able to have those payments that you thought might not have been qualifying payments count as qualifying payments. So this does have, I think, significant implications. But your comment about the complexity is a good one. As I read through that studentaid.gov page, and there are several paragraphs I read 2 or 3 or 4 times, I think it just highlights that when there's rules that are issued on something like this, which is, as I understand it, came out as an emergency authority from the Biden administration, just the complexities of the rules of how to address this, I think, highlight the complexities of the system overall when it comes to loan repayment. And so again, the borrower really does have the responsibility, whether we like the complex system or not, to make sure they're understanding the nuances and the rules. And of course, we're advocates for working for a professional, especially, folks shout out to our planning team that do this day in and day out with pharmacists that are, evaluating public service loan forgiveness as an option. So we will link in the show notes to the resource Tim mentioned, studentaid.gov. I hope folks will take some time to digest this a little bit further. And I think this is a great segue, Tim. We've talked about on the show before. The team at YFP Planning does a one-on-one student loan analysis that is focused alone on this question of what is the best repayment plan for my personal situation. And this conversation, I think, highlights the importance of answering that question and understanding all of the different options and nuances that are out there to make sure that we're intentionally choosing that option that is best for one's financial situation. So, if you're looking at this and wondering, what about this? What about that? Wanting to get a second, opinion on crossing T's and dotting I's. The planning team that we have, experts on student loans for pharmacists, I think are really well positioned to be able to help you. That student loan analysis service, you can learn more, yourfinancialpharmacist.com/SLA. And you can sign up for and purchase that service at that site. So, Tim, great stuff. I'm guessing this won't be the last time we talk about student loans, right?
Probably not. Probably not, unfortunately. And again, I think I would look at, we're kind of saying, yeah, more complexity here. I think the positive thing is that I think they're trying to work through to a system that is more forgiving. And that's one of the hesitancies for a lot of clients that we work with is like, is it going to be here? And I think all signs point to like forgiveness is not going to go the other way. I mean, they're going to be more restrictive. Right. I think they're really going to try to, because of, I think, just the environment, but also because of just how mismanaged it is, that, it's a little bit of a mea culpa in my opinion.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think it's a step towards simplicity. It feels a little bit more complex, to unravel this, but it's I think a step in that direction. And as you mentioned, I think it's signs pointing towards more of an appetite towards forgiveness, not less of. So remember here, we're talking about PSLF. We're not talking about non-PSLF. So this really is focused on the public service loan forgiveness. If folks are listening, I think one of the things that gives me great joy is just the amount of time we spent on student loans over the last 5 years. Is that it feels like the community pharmacists that are out there are really well versed on basic terminology and understanding of concepts. But if there are folks listening, hearing some of the terms around consolidation, PSLF, non-PSLF, refinance, et cetera, wanting more information, we've got lots of resources on the website, and you can check those out at yourfinancialpharmacist.com. Thanks again for listening to this week's episode of the Ask a YFP CFP segment of the Your Financial Pharmacist podcast. If we feature your question on the show, we'll send you a super comfy YFP t-shirt. You can submit your question by sending an email to info@yourfinancialpharmacist.com, or you can record your question by visiting yourfinancialpharmacist.com/ask YFP. Also, if you don't feel comfortable sharing your name on the episode, you can send or record your question anonymously. Have a great rest of your week.